What would you do if you got to meet your maker? And I don't mean your ma or pa, I'm talking the one behind the curtain, pulling the strings, controlling your every move. What kind of questions would you ask them? Why did you make me? What's my purpose? Can you make me taller? The questions would be never ending, but in the final episode of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, we see what happens when creation meets creator, exploring the line between puppet and puppet master. So I thought it'd be a bunch of fun to take a look into the existential horror of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. Let's go. Episode 6, the grand finale.
We're still dancing in chains.
Now, episode 6 to me is the most unique in the series, because Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is all about inescapable routines and cycles, a sort of colourful and fun but never ending torture. So how do you end a show like this and have it still be satisfying? A big part of the fun is the mystery. Even at this late stage in the series, we still know very little about how this world works. So do you give the characters a more concrete conclusion or lean into the mystery further, leaving some things up in the air? Well, let's find out. This time we get a completely different intro, but now with more context. Every episode so far has opened the same way. The trio singing their jolly little jig.
There's three of us, there's three of us.
It's fun, upbeat, and starts each episode off with a smile, before it slowly descends into chaos and horror. And because of this opening jig, that horror hits so much harder when it does inevitably appear. But now, things are different. The ending of the previous episode revealed for certain there is this figure out there, keeping them in this colourful prison. So now, the show doesn't even attempt to try and hide the truth behind this upbeat intro anymore. This dark presence is felt right from the get-go. This isn't a lullaby anymore. The house is now seen from further away, just a miniature in a big dark room covered in shadow. And what I love about this wall painted with a blue sky, green rolling hills and fluffy white clouds is that up close it gives us a lovely view, just out in nature, open and free. But then take a couple steps back and the truth is revealed. It's just an illusion, and really you're not free in the bright rolling hills but trapped inside this dark room. And this is something which we'll see a lot of throughout this episode. The idea of the truth being right in front of us, just not having enough information at the time to understand it.
Look closely, you will see.
We cut to the hand of a woman as she grabs a crank and turns it, spinning the house. And the lullaby type song we're used to begins playing. Whoever this woman is, she's making the trio's world turn, their sun rise. Their daily cycle begins with her hand. A small detail I like is how this spinning motion casts the light coming from within the house onto the model clouds above, making it look like a lightning storm is approaching our little trio. The camera zooms into the spinning house, which is now just a blur, making it feel as frenzied and far from calm as it could be. It creates these two entirely different emotions going into the episodes. No singing.
There's three of us.
No jokes.
And I've gone bold as well.
No soft, slow transition from the title card into the trio going about their day. Just a hard cut from this sense of danger right into the story. As if the flow of the show itself is crumbling. But what's this? Maybe things are back to normal, as we now follow the trio in the kitchen going about their business. Our boy Duck slamming his way through a crossword. But uh-oh, it must not be his lucky day, because he seems to be stuck.
That's a tricky one.
And although it doesn't require much explanation at this point in the series, we see a little sequence of events play out that helps to hammer home how Yellow isn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. He can't seem to get anything right. Not the crossword, not the dishes, but he tries anyway. You go, Yellow Man.
Hey, you know how I do it.
But this is all interrupted by a special delivery. A bill, more like duck bill teehee, for the electricity.
Who cares? We won't be paying that.
But oh no, Duck, you've goofed it, because all this bad-mouthing has summoned this episode's teacher. The electricity, taking a robotic form, busts out of a box on the wall. Now, in this final episode, the teacher doesn't play as big a role in the story. They're more a catalyst, used to set the wacky events into motion.
So I guess I'll be leaving then.
Usually, the teacher is the one in control, able to distract the trio and guide them along on some misguided lesson about the topic being discussed. But here, the teacher loses this control very early on, allowing us to see what happens when the trio are left to their own devices. The expectation is that things will get better for them. Now they're free, but that's not really the case. When given free will, you could argue that things actually get worse here, when no one is behind the steering wheel. It brings into question the puppet master's intentions. Could the trio be trapped here for their own good? So, this cheerful box of bolts and aluminium is called Electracy.
Electricity is cool, huh?
And she's here to teach the trio a valuable lesson about what is and isn't electricity through a fun and upbeat song.
It's time your brains will learn about electricity.
And at first, this song seems to be just a lol XD moment, but this is Don't Hug Me I'm Scared, and every detail matters, even if it's not clear at the time, because this song contains some very important setup and foreshadowing, when Duck asks about his beloved Shredder. It's the opener to a plot point and joke which we won't see paid off until much later on, and this combined with the fond way that Duck mentioned it earlier,
In my personal home shredder.
makes you think, well, this shredder clearly has some importance, otherwise they wouldn't have mentioned it twice so early on. It's like Chekhov's gun, which basically just means if a gun is shown in the first act, it must be fired in the third. Except instead of guns, we're talking about shredders. It's like Chekhov's shredder. Despite learning all about the wonders of electricity, the trio are still a tad confused, and so challenge this charged up lady.
Wait, hang on.
If she's so electric, how come she's not plugged in? But you see, they're all stupid, because Tracy has these little things called batteries. And at this point I thought this is amazing and so much fun, but when are we going to get some answers to that opening scene? I'm ravenous for some existential meddlings. After all, this is the finale, and time is running out. How are they going to wrap everything up in just 15 minutes? But don't worry, they do, and it's very impressive. You'd never guess where this episode ends up from the title or the first 5 minutes. And from this point on, everything really kicks into gear. The relevance of electricity to the bigger picture is revealed. You see, it's not just Tracy. Yellow also has batteries which power him. His, however, are extremely worn down, which finally explains why he appears so confused and lost all the time. Why he's seen as the big dum-dum who goes along with everything, never questioning it for a second. He's been running at minimum capacity. As these batteries have worn away, so has his ability to think clearly. This whole time, we haven't been seeing the real Yellow and what he's capable of. Duck then grabs the fresh batteries from Tracy and swaps them with Yellow's messed up ones. And a detail I like is that Duck switching these batteries isn't because he cares about Yellow and wants to see him at full power. Instead, it's just because the old batteries stank, and this makes Duck uncomfortable.
They reek.
A much more selfish reason. And I'm sure if he knew what this act would lead to, he would have never touched the batteries at all, as this simple switcheroo sets off a chain reaction which will see the power balance of this puppet show shift entirely. Beginning with this newfound power tripping Yellow out, the camera going into his mind looking as though it's racing, like a sudden rush of information is coming into his head. Yellow becoming larger in the frame as he gains more control over himself. When we cut back to the kitchen, he's changed. His hair is no longer messy and unkempt. He's a bit more put together now. Red asks him,
Do you feel any different?
I feel...
but before he can even answer, Tracy interrupts him. Now that she has Yellow's old mouldy batteries, she acts almost drunk. And we're not talking 2 pints on a Sunday evening, no. We're talking sloppy drunk after a night on the town.
I have cheeky snakes for hands.
And I think it's a smart choice to cut off Yellow's answer on how he feels, because it allows us to make up our own mind on whether this newfound awareness and intelligence will be good for him in the long run, rather than giving a simple answer outright. Because yes, he's thinking for himself now, but this means he slowly begins to see this place for what it really is. And that's my favourite thing about these last 2 episodes. They really explore the idea of whether ignorance is bliss. The notion that the more intelligent and aware of your situation you become, the more unhappy you'll be. Like how most dogs are probably happier than their owners. They don't have to worry about what made them, pesky taxes, all the scary, spooky, awful things that happen out there in the world that we as humans are very, very aware of. All it has to worry about is when am I next being fed and when am I next getting a belly rub. Which, to be honest, is all I think about too. And before this moment where his mindset is altered entirely, Yellow seems so happy and jolly in most situations. He doesn't see the house as a prison as, say, Red does. He sees it as entertainment. Even the creepy twins from the episode Family didn't seem to faze him.
Now I get to move across the family bridge.
Oh, well done.
He was happy with his life, but now he's self-aware, all of this changes. He questions everything.
Yeah, none of this seems right, does it? Where did it even come from?
He becomes dissatisfied with his situation, and his response is not to run away like Red did, but get to the bottom of it. Figure out the source of the problem so it can be fixed, or at the very least, he can get some answers. And this change of character all begins with another version of the previous scene. Another crossword, another set of dishes, but now it plays out differently. This time, Yellow has finished the whole crossword by himself.
Finish the whole thing.
He now talks much faster, with confidence and certainty.
Maybe your blood sugar is low. Let me get you a snack.
He's even created a new language, made up of some bizarre symbols. The same symbols which have popped up constantly throughout the series, woven into the fabric of this puppet show. Again, right in front of us, we just couldn't understand it. Yellow is still a creation, but now he himself is creating, coming up with ideas.
I've actually been experimenting with a third symbolic subset.
It's another way of showing that he's becoming aware of his surroundings, thinking more like a puppet master than a puppet. Not just going along with this place, but trying to understand it. And there's a great line which separates the new him from the other two. When discussing the electricity bill, Yellow says the word tariff.
Tariff?
A very big boy word, and Duck becomes confused and jealous, saying,
I can make up words too, you know.
but when he tries, all he can come up with is tariff. It makes it clear that Yellow is the only one of the trio who can actually now think for himself, not just copy. And you can't really blame Red and Duck. The lessons they're taught every episode are so misleading, they're practically designed to keep them in the dark. After the switcheroo, Red and Yellow are very similar in seeing this place for what it really is, but Red never really questions why these things are happening. He just knows he wants to escape.
I'd like to go somewhere else.
And I think this is the biggest difference between their two characters. It's the questioning.
Where did it even come from? Who are you? What's the answer?
All this talk about bills and insurance causes a little puppet of a safe to pop out as they always do.
Insurance!
But before he can teach, Yellow quickly shuts him down.
Hang on, that's wildly misleading.
Which isn't anything particularly new. Duck has told teachers in the past that they're wrong.
What? What does that even mean? Why are you two so obsessed with family anyway? It's just a word.
Just a word?
But here, Yellow explains exactly how they're wrong.
Insurance!
Ha! Wrong! Shut up!
In the simplest terms, an insurance transaction involves the insured assuming a guaranteed
And the others try their best to ignore him, drowning him out.
He's gone wrong.
It's fine, just ignore him.
Because remember, ignorance is bliss. And Duck repeats this line quite a few times.
Wrong. This is wrong. It's you who's gone wrong.
Duck more than anyone enjoys his life in the house. Anytime the trio are strayed away from it by a teacher, he just wants to get back to what they're supposed to be doing. And so he sees this changed behaviour as a threat to the status quo of the show. The next stage of Yellow's newfound awareness comes as he has a little chat with himself in the mirror. The old meeting the new, with a bit of literal and metaphorical self-reflection, a crucial part of Yellow's journey as he's beginning to doubt himself.
Have we gone wrong?
But all it takes is him looking back at what he was to get the answers he needs.
They're not in charge of us anymore. Maybe they never were.
And so his reflection walks away. He isn't that person anymore. But in the space that old Yellow left sits a staircase. But this quickly fades into another inanimate object turned teacher.
That's a bit of fun, huh?
Trying to deter these independent thoughts he's having. But he just walks away, wanting none of it. He's gone from listening to the lessons and nodding along to correcting them to seeing them as totally insignificant in the grand scheme of things. The camera then stays close to Yellow and the volume on the others lowers, putting us in his perspective and showing how their conversation no longer matters to him. He's focused on bigger things and wants to know what's up the stairs. This is the only time in the show we get a look at the kitchen from another angle. We usually see it from head on, giving us a look at the three walls. But now it's reversed, meaning this is where the screen usually is, because the camera is normally right here. This staircase has been hidden behind our point of view the entire show. Just like the painted wall from the intro, we just couldn't see the full picture. The higher up these stairs go, the darker it gets. It builds this sense of dread. You don't want him to go because it's spooky, but you understand it because, just like him, we want answers. And up these steps is the only place he'll find them. And this shot is fantastic. Duck and Red look like they always do, in the overwhelming brightness and colours of the kitchen, but Yellow and the stairs are sat back from this, covered in shadow. And this drastic separation of lighting almost creates these two different layers, and shows how Yellow no longer belongs down here with the others. And seeing as answers are the goal now, he decides to rise up the stairs, the overwhelming brightness getting smaller and smaller with each step. And notice, on his way up, the handrail changes from brown felt fabric to hard wood, showing this transition from the children's show to reality. Our little Yellow is growing up. He passes a painting of him doing the exact thing that's happening at this moment. Someone out there has seen what's to come. It makes you question whether Yellow really is in control of his own actions now. If he is making his own decisions, how come something has predicted this moment as it's happening? But this isn't my favourite painting in the episode. That one comes later. When he gets to the top, a door lies in front of him, with a sign that says Big Boy Room. And when he enters, he's greeted by none other than Red and Duck, but different versions of them to what we know. At first, they seem to also be aware.
Yeah, we're big boys.
Big boys.
Big boys.
Rocking glasses and sweaters, so they must be smart, right? I mean, the walls are chalkboard, covered in symbols and equations. Soft piano music plays. Much less energetic and a tad more classy than the songs we're used to by now. If you're a snob, that is. Personally, me and my boys boogie woogie to Todney's song on any given summer's eve. But the big boy's room has this smugness about it. From the way Red repeats this same condescending line twice.
Try and keep up, mate. Try and keep up, mate. Try and keep up, mate.
To this shot where they literally look down on Yellow. Even the name, Big Boy's Room, it's all a show. The illusion of intelligence. Just another distraction intended to keep him from straying any further from what he's supposed to be doing. Because the two inform Yellow that instead of learning one thing at a time, they learn two whole lessons. Double points! with both a song about boundaries and a song about rocks beginning to play. Exactly what was happening downstairs, but just twice as much of it, and dressed up to be smarter. So yes, they're learning 2 lessons now, but they're still not thinking for themselves. A way you could look at this is the transition from preschool and the misleading lessons you're taught about how nice and simple everything is, to middle school and high school, with a whole bunch of lessons thrown at you that you're supposed to ingrain into yourself.
Actually, the first ever wrong.
And for someone who's questioning the nature of their reality, this would all seem fairly pointless. He looks over to one of the teachers and sees their puppeteer. They look as though they're blending into the background, and when they notice that Yellow sees them, they seem taken off guard. Like this isn't supposed to be happening. A puppet shouldn't be able to know it's a puppet. He now is beginning to not only understand the situation he's in, but how it works too. The strings behind the puppets. And so Yellow realizes that this is just another place that won't give him the answers he's looking for. He turns and leaves the room. But as he does, a light appears from a new set of stairs, like a higher calling drawing him in, leading him to yet another door, with an electrical sign saying Bigger Boys Room. This room is similar to the previous one, but more futuristic, with all white walls and surfaces, and yet another version of Red and Duck, except here, Red seems almost godlike, with a floating crystal head. A sort of ruby with small balls floating around him like he has his own gravitational pull. His voice now has an echo to it.
Yeah, what have you been doing?
Okay.
Making him sound more powerful. So surely these guys have the answer, right? Well, not quite. You see, instead of puppet strings, Red is being lifted by a drum. So despite appearing so complex and powerful, he's still being puppeteered. Duck, on the other hand, is more mechanical and robotic, things which can also be controlled from a distance. And again, there's this feeling of elevated smugness coming from the pair, with Duck's brain exposed under a see-through dome, almost as if to say, look at my big brain, how smart I am. I'm 3 floors up, baby. This floor seems like a much more cruel place. There's no sing-alongs here. And when Yellow tells them,
And I've been questioning the very nature of my reality.
instead of support and encouragement, the two mock him.
Is that all?
They may call themselves bigger boys, but they certainly don't act like it. And so, fed up, he leaves.
There has to be something else. Doesn't there?
He can't accept that this is the end of the line. None of his questions have been answered, although his journey isn't over just yet. But before we take a look at what all of this has been building towards, let's see what the others have been up to.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Super Best Friends,
Dick and Red are back downstairs having a grand old time playing with the Electricity, which is struggling to keep up with the amount they're using for all their trendy new gadgets. Usually, this wouldn't be a problem, because Tracy would be in charge, and seemingly for good reason, as Duck and Red now abuse this freedom.
And who needs this boring coaster when we could have this electronic smart coaster?
Well, there's no point in learning about something without putting it to use.
Right.
And they blow a fuse, taking them out of the bright light of the kitchen into almost total darkness. The only thing we see, other than the pair, are some of the kitchen tiles. It looks as though they're in a void, unsure of how far the darkness around them spreads. Even though moments before they were in the kitchen, which is, well, kitchen sized. This doesn't feel like the same place anymore. Walking past characters who have appeared throughout the YouTube series
Goes from room to room, greeting the different organs.
and the show, all of which seem dead and cast away. It's as though this cheery world with colourful characters is dying. Nothing is where it should be, and the nature of what Don't Hug Me I'm Scared is unravelling, now that the puppet master has lost all control of things. No more puppet show storylines, no more bright, cheery distractions to keep the trio in line, and now Yellow coming closer and closer. And despite things seeming worse for Duck and Red, well, at least their actions are their own now. Which would you choose? Colourful but never-ending distractions, or to be left to your own devices in the dark? Back upstairs, Yellow approaches yet another door, this time titled Lesley. A name which has popped up many times throughout the show, just like the stairs hidden in plain sight. On the wall we see another painting, just like the one downstairs, as it depicts exactly what's about to happen. Except this time, in the painting on the wall is yet another painting of Yellow reaching for the door. And in this painting is another painting. And this likely goes on forever, past the point of imagination. A visual representation of Yellow questioning what's above him, the layers that go up and up. There's something so terrifying about someone knowing your every move before it happens. It makes your fate feel inescapable, and these paintings are a quick and subtle reminder that Yellow is still a puppet. Because in every single one, every depiction, the same thing happens. There's no reality where Yellow doesn't enter this room. So what lies inside the room titled Lesley? We get another close-up, intimate shot from behind Yellow's head as he enters, as though we're coming into this space with him. Again, we're seeing all of this from his perspective, and it's revealed to be the same room from the intro. But now we've taken another step back, allowing us to see even more of the picture. So the puppet master has been here with them the whole time.
We're still dancing in chains.
And now we have a better look at the roof. We see it slanted. It's a very subtle way of showing that this is the top floor without saying it outright. Because what could be higher than the attic? The one and only Lesley sits facing away from us, building anticipation as to what she looks like, as we still haven't seen her face. She's playing a soft tune on her piano. So who actually is Lesley? Well, one thing's for certain, she's essentially like a god here. She seems to have created them. Again, their daily cycle begins with her hand, and if they stray too far from her plan, her grand design, she seems to have the power to just put them back home, back in place. I mean, just look at her outfit, her drip. A bright, colourful fleece covered in a patchwork of characters and the kind of patterns seen throughout the show. It's like she's got the entirety of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared wrapped around her. And as Yellow enters, she's the only thing in the dim attic illuminated by the light pouring through the stained glass window. She's quite literally enlightened, holding all the knowledge.
Are you just going to stand there?
Notice how she doesn't even look at him. She knows who he is and what he's doing, as if she's seen all this before. Her voice has this echo to it,
No matter how we twist and turn.
making her sound almost ethereal. We then finally get a close look at her,
My name's Lesley.
showing her unsettling character design. Extremely pale skin covered in stitches, as though she's been put back together. She almost resembles a puppet, and we'll soon see how she and Yellow aren't all that different. We see 3 exhibition cases on the wall in different shapes, their colours corresponding to the different members of the trio: Yellow, Red and Green. Each one showcasing a significant item from one of the previous episodes. We got the Chuddle Dollops, which only a family could open, the shovel, which was used to kill Stain Edwards, and the fresh batteries, which now sit inside Yellow. I've spent so long trying to decipher what this means, and one theory I had was that these are the items that will break the cycle of torment, which is why they're locked behind glass, on display, visible, but just out of reach. Let me explain. Yellow now wants answers.
Where did it even come from?
And these batteries are what have allowed him to become aware and rise through the house. Whereas our boy Red just wants this nightmare to end.
We live in an actual nightmare!
This life in the house which he sees as torment. And one answer to this is death. and Dark has wanted nothing more than to be part of a family.
Everybody's talking about their family.
And the Chuddle Dollops were a symbol, a confirmation of being part of one.
That's a family pack for a family.
So if the trio obtains these items, then the cycle of pain breaks. There's no more show, no more don't hug me, I'm scared. Or there's a chance that these cases are simply just souvenirs, taken from the episodes and put on display for Lesley to reminisce about her storylines. Sort of like an artist hanging up her own work. And remember, take all this with a little, or maybe a big, grain of salt. Yellow then arrives at the piano and catches a glance at the model house. The same house we've seen the trio sit in the entire show. The same house which Yellow has just risen up. And in this model house we see everything we've just witnessed. Yellow in the attic and the other two lost in the chaos downstairs. So whatever's going on with this model house, it's mimicking their current actions. Or is it? What's to say it's not the other way around? If Lesley did something as sinister as draw a little mustache on this doll of Yellow, would it then appear on our Yellow?
Now that we're men, we have facial hair.
Is he following or leading, making his own path by exploring the house? Or is all of this just part of Lesley's plan? She now stares up into the light. She seems unfazed by his presence, like he's completely insignificant.
You didn't build all this, did you?
That's a good question.
And you might have started to notice the ambiguous way that Lesley talks.
You're one of my favourites.
One of her favourite what? Puppets? Yellow people? How many others are there? This kind of ambiguous speaking reminds me of interpretations of deities, as it allows the one looking for answers to come to their own conclusion. So, Yellow switches up his questioning to be more direct, trying to cut through her games, asking outright,
What's the answer?
but she doesn't even bother giving a response this time, and so Yellow becomes fed up with her uncooperation.
Why are you laughing?
Because it's so funny! Gosh!
She moves out of this warm beam of light and into the shadow, this slamming of the keys breaking her calm, mellow tune, like her true nature slipping through. Not warm or friendly, but angry. And I love this phrasing, because to her, this is just a bit of fun. But to Yellow, they're talking about the reason for his existence. She now towers over him, the one in control, and she proposes a deal. If he helps her tidy up the mess in the modern house, then she'll help him, using this vague wording as a weapon. Because what does help even mean to someone like this? She doesn't say how she'll help him or even what with. This whole scene almost resembles a deal with the devil.
You help me tidy things up around here, and I'll help you.
None of this sounds like a woman who's about to give up control of her world. She's entertaining his search for answers, but really, she holds all the power here. Again, she has the model house. She likely painted the paintings. She probably already knows what's going to happen next, and you want Yellow to defy her, but this isn't how it goes down. Lesley then grabs the doll of Yellow and moves him back downstairs with the others. And this is one of my favourite shots in the entire show, because as she does this, we hear church bells ringing out. And if you have massive ears, you might have noticed that this sequence of bells is eerily similar to the ones heard in the episode Death, when the camera panned from Duck's tombstone on the surface down to the coffin below. It's a great piece of audio association that draws a parallel between these two moments, a sort of metaphorical death for this new Yellow. And at this point, you might be thinking, if Lesley really can control everything from up here, then why wouldn't she just place everything back to how she wants it herself? But instead, we see her resort to tricking Yellow into doing what she wants. And this is what makes me think that Yellow actually does have free will, and it's up to him what happens next. We then get the introduction of the book, the thick-ass book, Lesley pulling it out of her jacket and blowing the dust on it into Yellow's face. Again, that teasing nature coming through.
You are just too funny.
It's like she's doing everything she can to get on Yellow's nerves, and I love how she doesn't even need to use threats or violence to get under your skin. It's this sort of passive-aggressive horror, where what she's saying is technically nice.
You're one of my favourites.
But the context around it is so uncomfortable. It's the same reason the creepy twins are my favourite characters.
That's right, Lily. He's almost part of the family.
The book looks pretty ancient, and it adds to that feeling it contains information long since gone. Something important and sacred, bound in leather and covered in symbols. The same symbols which Yellow is now beginning to understand. So it's safe to assume that this book is the help he needs. And now Yellow's side of the deal is completed, Lesley tells him to run along. But of course, he's come all this way. He's seen the lower levels and knows he won't find satisfaction by regressing. Besides, Lesley gives us one more little nugget of information to look over.
Can't I stay here with you?
Oh no.
You're not my real son!
Oh no, she didn't just drop that lore when we're wrapping up this conversation, so from her cranky tone, it's probably safe to assume that this is a touchy subject. Now, this could be a big clue to what's actually going on here, who Lesley is, as well as the yellow figure on the back of her fleece. Now, I'll only touch on this briefly, but there's a strong chance this is her son, or should I say was, as it's likely he passed away. And now, to cope with this loss and escape her harsh reality, she's created a world where everything is fun and friendly and colourful, filled with singing characters, all to entertain this recreation of her deceased son, which is why he's her favourite.
You're one of my favourites.
But he'll never be able to replace the real thing. I mean, look at the pattern on her jacket. This boy takes up so much more space than anything else. But if we know one thing about this place, it's that you can't keep out the darkness forever. It always eventually creeps in. And that's why I think she's losing control, why the teachers have been dying.
Is that always dead here?
But a big question is, if this really is a version of her son, then why does this place feel like a prison? I mean, if you're going to create a whole world just to feel like your son is still around, why not have him interact with you? Well, an answer to this could be it's easier to pull the strings from above. Make it seem like the trio's actions are their own so they don't become defiant. Distract them anytime they question the nature of their reality. Because if Yellow gains awareness and comes up here, he'll realise he's just a puppet and be harder to control, which is exactly what we've seen play out this episode. But it's important to remember that all of this is just theory and speculation, and that doesn't really bother me. Don't get me wrong, I think the theories are cool, but the stories and themes are amazing in their own right. Even without any hints that Yellow is some version of her son, I think the episode would still be fantastic. And before you can even dwell on this moment, Lesley doubles back on this seemingly crucial line, laughing her outburst off as a joke.
Only joking.
Just as we thought we had it spelled out, although there is a chance she's using humour to deflect from the darker side of all this, masking the truth. Now, I don't think the reasoning of
You don't belong up here
is enough to get Yellow to return downstairs, just as we saw happen in the doll's house. I think what really seals his fate is that when Lesley tells him to go, she says he'll be able to show his friends what he's been given. You see, despite not always having his best interests in mind, Yellow does care about the others. They're the only company he has. And now he believes he has the answers to free them all. And again, this is the attic, so it must be the top floor. The only place to go now is back downstairs, or so it seems, because as Yellow goes to leave, Lesley's fake smile fades away, and just as his back is turned, a door, almost built into the wall as to be invisible when closed, swings open, revealing yet another set of stairs, which is why the sloped attic roof is such a genius piece of misdirection. I never once questioned that this wasn't the final layer, and if there is true answers, it's likely they can be found above, or maybe not, and it just keeps going on forever and ever. but now we'll never know. And the biggest takeaway from all this is that Lesley isn't the one in control. Back when Yellow first entered the room, Lesley was in the middle of singing a little jig that holds a lot of importance, and the rhyme goes like this: batteries can be replaced, but some things stay the same. No matter how much we twist and turn, we're still dancing in chains. And at first this appears to be about Yellow's journey, but it's also vital to understanding Lesley's position in all this. You see, even if Lesley is the creator of the trio, a god to them, this doesn't mean that she herself doesn't have a puppet master. And I think that's what her character is supposed to represent. Both puppet and puppeteer. I mean, look at her appearance. The stitches, the bright colours, the white gloves resembling the teachers and Michael Jackson, the king of pop. And if you look at the Instagram of the show's creator, Becky Sloan, it actually gives us a better look at Lesley's design, and you can see wool coming out of one of the stitches. She seems half human, half puppet, and that's why she says, "We're dancing in chains, not you're dancing in chains." It's likely she feels trapped in this situation too. She knows there's no getting out of this. But either way, human or puppet, there is something above her, and then probably something above that. Everything has to have something which created it. It's that never-ending question of existence. Okay, if something made me, then what made that? And then what made that? And then what made that? And this just goes on forever and ever. Just like the painting, just like the house. We then cut back to Red and Duck chillin' in the dark.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Super Best Friends,
they've given up exploring now and have begun to accept their new normal. And we get this pretty sweet gesture from a character who up until this point has seemed so unsatisfied with everything.
All we do is sit around and then some guy comes and tells us about banks or vegetables. I wouldn't mind looking at the house again and maybe looking at you.
It's also a great resolution for Red's character after the tragic ending of the previous episode. From the first time we see him, it seems like he believes he'd be better off if he wasn't around anymore.
Because I feel like I could maybe be dead.
But now he's experiencing a taste of what he thought he wanted, surrounded by nothing at all. He realizes that even though he doesn't enjoy the house or the routine, Duck and Yellow are like him, because they're all trapped in this together. And in doing so, Duck finally gets that moment of family he's been looking for.
I like looking at you too.
And so, now on common terms, the pair wonder what's happened to sweet old Yellow. And as they do, the door opens and light pours over them. It's our boy Yellow, and he's here to save the day, share all he's seen so that together, as a family, they can figure out what's happening once and for all. But this is Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. There's no such thing as a happy ending. Because before Yellow can even put up a fight, Duck runs over and switches the batteries back to their rightful owners, taking away Yellow's awareness and intelligence. And he doesn't do it in a malicious way. He hasn't seen the crazy journey Yellow's just been on, or understand how powerful a tool these batteries are for them. He just wants things to go back to how they were. And that's exactly what happens. Yellow returns to his old self, his hair unkept, confused and unable to focus. He tries desperately to grab at his thoughts, fighting against himself to remember how important this book is, but he loses it.
Incredible.
And we finally get the payoff to that seemingly just funny and random moment from earlier. Yellow walks over as chill as can be and rams the book in there, shredding it to pieces. The only chance they had to gain answers and control is now gone. And to make it even worse, the trio are cheering it on. No idea what they're doing. As a viewer, you know the context and just want to scream at them to stop, but they're back to their bright cycle of torment, and there's nothing they can do about it. And to symbolise this return to their usual routine, the opening song we're used to, the one missing from the intro, begins to play. And despite looking so cheery and colourful again, the message of the finale is a grim one. Because Yellow's caring nature, this act of kindness for his boys, is what ultimately caused his failure. If he'd have left Red and Duck to fend for themselves, he would have had time to read the book, or stayed in the attic long enough to see he could have gone higher. And again, that question of free will comes back up. His doll being placed back downstairs. Was he ever really in control? Is there any reality or scenario where Yellow defies Lesley, seeing her for the trickster she is, and moves past her to rise to a higher level? But even so, in this case, for our little trio, they seem to have done her work for her. We then zoom out on the trio, but this time the kitchen goes on and on and on. And what a perfect final shot. You see, before, this is where the stairs were, the path that leads to escape. And now the batteries are back in Tracy and the book is shredded, the stairs and any path out are gone for good. The fourth wall is called this because in most TV shows you can only see 3 walls at one time, and where the fourth would be is the TV screen. It's a barrier between the show and reality, and by making this shot go on and on, I like to think of it as a way of the creators showing that these 3 little puppets will never hit this fourth wall. They'll never really find reality. They're trapped here for good now, being forced to play out Lesley's puppet show with no escape and no answers. And that's it. Credits roll. And I wish I had some more concrete answers, but the ending is left very vague.
What's going on?
But that's the point. Sometimes ambiguous endings can annoy me a bit, because most of the time it feels like they just couldn't really think of a proper way to end it. But Don't Hug Me I'm Scared's ending feels earned and like it fits. It's set up by every episode which has come before it. Every single one ends in the same place it began. No matter how crazy the story might become, there's never been any lasting consequences. And that might sound like a complaint, but it's really not. The finale's all about the effect that awareness and knowledge can have on us. And so to me, any one answer would feel disappointing. So I'm glad the trio didn't manage to break free or reveal the truth as to why they're there, because the unknown is so much more engaging. This is probably my favourite show in years. It's everything I love about art and television. It's just pure creativity. This kind of show is the closest to a live action animation as you can get, because everything you see is created by an artist specifically for this. So every single frame, every prop, every background, and even movement of the characters, it all feels intentional and has to be done from the ground up. And that's why every frame feels like there's so much love and care just poured into it from creators who clearly love what they're doing. It all works together so seamlessly. To me, it's a perfect show.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
But yeah, this isn't the end of Don't Hug Me I'm Scared content on this channel. I've got the YouTube series, there's the pilot and some rankings I want to talk about. It just might be a bit more kind of spaced out. And if you like any of the drawings behind me or anything a bit spirity like this, or this, then follow my Instagram, waterwavy 4Ys. But yeah, this video has been long enough. Thank you, I love you, goodbye.
Off you pop.